You are about to enter the Shockwaves Skullsessions podcast on ShockwaveSkullsessions.com. And now your host, Bob Nalbandian.
All right, well, Shockwaves Skullsessions. This is episode number 75. And, of course, we got with us here the Skullsessions man himself, the Armenian maven of metal, Mr. Bob Nalbandian. What's going on, Bob?
There's that title. I'm doing all right, Matt. How are you doing, man?
Hey, that title is going to, live with you in infamy, Bob. It's part of you now. And of course, on the other line there, we've got my other partner there from my Aftershocks, and of course, he's the host of the Classic Metal Show, Mr. Chris Akin. What's up, Chris?
I'm not a maven too. This sucks. How can I not be a maven?
Well, it's up to you have to have Neely give you your maven name. You know what I mean? I'll come up with one soon, but we gotta. It's going to take some time. I got to get a little creative.
Yeah,
here,
but you've been knighted by Angry Anderson, so
that's true. That is true. I am knighted.
Well, cool, guys. Well, first off, we haven't done one of these in a while. Obviously, it's been a while since we've kind of given updates on what's going on with everything. But before we do that, I think we should just kind of real quick get into talking about some unfortunate, sad news that's been going on, the last couple of weeks or even last month, I should say. We've had some deaths in the rock and metal world. Most recently, just I believe a day ago, Frankie Banali from Quiet Riot, the drummer, passed away. He was dealing with cancer for quite some time now, and unfortunately, he passed away at 68 years old. Obviously, before that, Pete Way, UFO longtime bassist, iconic bassist, is no longer with us. And of course, the other big name is producer Martin Birch. So it's been kind of a rough last couple of weeks for the rock and metal world there in terms of some of these, heroes no longer being with us. Pete Way was obviously a huge. I know, Bob, you're a huge UFO fan, so you want to talk about Pete?
Yeah, unfortunately, I think this is going to be the new trend. I think we're going to see this happening more and more. Obviously, it's just it's just a matter of life and death. That's what happens when these people age. And most of our heroes that we grew up on, that I grew up on, that I saw as a kid, that I worshipped, that I had posters on my wall, they're in their 70s and late 60s, 70s, and it's unfortunately we're going to see a lot more of this. But yeah, Pete Way hit hard. What was real sad is that, obviously three key members of UFO all passed away within the last few months. Of course, we had Pete Way and just recently Paul Chapman, who was a very, very underrated guitar player. Of course, he filled in for Michael Schenker. He took over Michael Schenker, but did some of UFO's best albums, The Wild, The Willing, and Innocent, No Place to Run. The Mechanics, that was a tremendous loss. And, of course, Paul Raymond before that, who played on some of the greatest UFO records, obviously starting with Lights Out and Obsession. And now, of course, Pete Way, original bassist and one of the godfathers of bass. And I think people that don't realize how many people he influenced, not just his playing wise, more so his attitude and look and stage presence. Steve Harris, obviously a huge fan from the Striped Pants, Def Leppard. They've really copped the Pete Way look. The bassist Rick Savage and so many artists and musicians have Pete as one of the most influential bass players, and the UFO definitely. One of the most influential bands, and I don't think it was that big a surprise about Pete because everyone knew his lifestyle. In fact, they thought Pete would be the first to go, and he hung in there. He did a book, and he which was kind of interesting and weird. He switched to be a front man. He could no longer play bass. Just recently, he was doing shows up till like a few months ago as a front man singer, and I heard it wasn't all that great, but the fact that the dude just kept going Lemmy style, speaking of Lemmy, him and Lemmy were very close, and he kind of had that same attitude. It's like, fuck it, man, I'm going to go till I die. And that's the way to do it. And I do want to bring up one major loss that very much on the underground level, but a absolute legend in the new wave of British heavy metal was Pete Hayworth. guitarist for the band Legend, one of my all-time favorite bands, not just of the new wave of British heavy metal, but I think one of the all-time greatest musicians and lyricists, Pete Hayworth. Those first two Legend albums, the 1980 self-titled debut, and or 81, I think, was the self-titled, and 82, Death in the Nursery. Two of the absolute greatest underground metal albums you could find. I mean, these guys were the I know you're into the whole stoner doom thing. These guys did it better than anyone, Matt. If you've ever heard early Legend, they had a kind of an eerie, kind of a Pink Floyd meets Sabbath, very heavy, eerie feel.
Like psychedelic, like a psychedelic
Not
sort of.
psychedelic, really.
No?
It's just very kind of doomy, but
Gotcha.
incredibly sophisticated band, especially lyrically. He wrote some fantastic lyrics. So that's another major loss. And to go on, Martin Birch, I mean, one of my favorite all-time producers.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I know one of Chris Akin's favorite, Deep Purple, Made in Japan. But you listen to that Made in Japan album, that is absolutely flawless for a live album recorded in 1972. I mean, unfucking believable sounds that Martin Birch got way back then. The Iron Maiden albums that he did, just groundbreaking stuff. And don't forget about the MSG albums he did, Black Sabbath, Heaven and Hell. He did some of the early Whitesnake records. Tremendous producer.
Yeah.
Blue Oyster Cult,
Mm-hmm.
and who was the other one that we just mentioned? That
Frankie Banali just passed.
Frankie Banali, yeah. That one was sad because it went so quick. I mean, he, we heard about it and he was fighting it, and then all of a sudden, boom, on Facebook yesterday, I saw all these posts that he passed away, and I think everyone knew, pancreatic cancer. If you don't know, it's one of the worst cancers you could get as far as the survival rate. So, his chances of survival were slim, but it happened rather quick, I got to say. And, I will admit I was not the biggest fan of Quiet Riot or Frankie, but I mean, he was a phenomenal drummer, truly amazing drummer. And it's always sad to see, people, especially from the 80s who are, young. Well, I think he was about 68.
68, yeah.
68. Mm-hmm. So, but, he had been around. He played with Wasp. And, another guy, I believe we mentioned on the last podcast together, Bob Kulick, who had passed too, who had also played in Wasp and many. But he, interesting enough, we never really heard the cause of death with Bob Kulick, if it was self-inflicted or what. It was never really detailed as far as I know. But anyway, pass it on to you, Mr. Akin.
Well, yeah, it's definitely a very strange time, as far as legends going. I'll start with Martin Birch because, I'm an Iron Maiden fan. And if you're an Iron Maiden fan, Martin Birch pretty much was a member of Iron Maiden. He was the unsung member. Any of the good Iron Maiden he did. He produced all of the good albums, so Martin Birch, and then obviously he did Black Sabbath and Blue Oyster Cult and so many other things, even Made in Japan, which, contrary to belief, I do like. It's just that our listeners make me hate Richie Blackmore. I mean, Martin Birch, I'm always fascinated by producers because, for me personally, I don't think I have that ear. I just listen to music. I'm like, okay, that's cool, or that's not. And that's about as far as I can get into it. I can't really, I can pick apart things a little bit, but there's no way could I sit in a studio, watch somebody record something and say, well, if you did this instead, it would sound better. I don't have that kind of vision or whatever. A guy like a Martin Birch that took literally the legends of the game, Black Sabbath, Iron Maiden, Blue Oyster Cult, those are the big three that he worked with, and all three of them are considered, legendary. Deep Purple as well. All of them considered legendary, and this guy helmed their records. That tells you that at the highest level, people understood how much greatness this guy had. So, I think he's a tremendous loss, to the rock and metal community. And, honestly, what's surprising to me is that he just retired. You know, I mean, he did, I think his last thing he did was like 1992 and just, okay, I'm done. And that's, my hope is that a guy like Martin Birch made so much money that he was able to just take 30 years and live out his life and have fun and not be struggling to where he has to produce some local band to pay his house payment or whatever. Right. So, but he did, he retired for 30 good years. So he had, he had the great life. He had the huge success. And then he had 30 years of retirement where he didn't have to, come back and rest on his laurels to feed himself, which is a good thing. Pete Way, I'll tell my Pete Way story. I've told this thing before on the CMS, but I'll tell you guys. Pete actually played when Neely moved from Ohio to Chicago. We had a going away show, and Pete did an appearance at the show with the band American Dog. And Pete showed up, and we were all sitting in the green room. And the thing about Pete, he was married to this chick. I don't know if he still was at the end or if she had gone away or whatever, but at the time he was married to this chick, and she was there. And I don't know if it was Pete or if it was her, but they brought this little tiny dog, one of these little dogs that you could kind of fit if you put your hands together. You could fit in your hands, right?
A rat monkey.
Oh yeah, a little tiny dog. So Pete's there, and he's sitting on a couch, and his chick is there, and his chick was just hounding him. This was in one of those times where Pete was trying to get himself clean and sober and whatnot. And so Pete, he has a dog, and he's petting the dog, and, but he wanted to go and party. There's a big, everybody's partying around. He wanted to party, and the wife was all over his ass about, no, you're going to stay back here. You're not going to go out and party. You're going to just blah, blah, blah. So what Pete kept doing was Pete kept pinching the dog, and then the dog would run out of the green room into like the main room of the club, and he would send the chick to go chase the dog. And as soon as the chick would leave the backstage area to go chase the dog, he would grab whatever beers were backstage and like power slamming beers. Oh. And he got himself all hammered, but he was playing cool with this chick. So now fast forward maybe an hour later, I go in this bathroom to take a piss. Pete is doing lines of coke off the top of a urinal in the bathroom, in a dirty club bathroom. He's just, doing these lines of coke, and he's like, "This is a party now, isn't it?" And he's a wild man. And it was funny because he sang two songs with American Dog. He sang Dr. Doctor and Mother Mary. And he made us write the words down because he was so fucked up he couldn't remember the words. and it was funny because he's on stage and he was singing Dr. Doctor and he was singing Mother Mary, and he was shaking so hard from doing so much coke and drinking so much. He was like, we were watching me and Neely were in the back laughing our ass off because he was shaking the papers were shaking so hard from him holding it because he was all strung out. But
the wife had to know at that point, huh?
Oh yeah, I'm sure she knew at that point. But honestly, that sounds like a horrible story, but that's a Pete Way story. That's what Pete Way was.
How he lived his life.
He was a party guy, and he loved to party, and another guy, I think if he was here, he would tell you that he had a good life and he lived every minute of it, and good for him, 68, he got it all in. So, and then as far as
longer than most thought.
Yeah. And then as far as Frankie Banali, like you, Bob, not a huge fan, certainly not a huge fan of Frankie as a guy, but I'll never, I hate to be that guy, but you know what? The way he did Mark Huff when Mark Huff had the brain cancer and he fired him while he was in the hospital. Hate to say karma, but yeah, it's kind of there, but instead of being the negative guy, which I could be, I'm not going to be, because I will say Metal Health, gave so many bands that I love the career that they had. And there's no denying that, whether you like Quiet Riot or you don't like Quiet Riot, you cannot argue that Metal Health kicked the door in for commercial success of heavy metal.
Absolutely right. It was the number one on the charts, right? First metal hard rock,
first heavy metal album to go number one.
Yeah, exactly.
First number one, and every Motley Crue, Metallica, Def Leppard, pick a band.
That opened the doors, especially on MTV, to metal.
Oh, yes,
because everyone was blown away, especially when that took over Michael Jackson's Thriller. That and the US Festival, everyone was blown away that the US Festival drew 3 times more than the biggest bands on the planet, all the new wave bands and the other 2 nights that were all MTV bands. And then, they see Quiet Riot go to number 1, and that's when really MTV changed overnight from new wave to a hard rock metal primarily. So, Quiet Riot definitely was responsible. That album in particular, Metal Health, was responsible.
Yeah, and unfortunately, they didn't do much past Metal Health that was any good. But I mean, you can't argue that Metal Health opened the door. Any band from between 1983 and 1990 that had a platinum, any hard rock or metal band that was platinum has to thank Quiet Riot. There's just there's no way to argue anything else on that. Mm-hmm. And then and Frankie had his own sound. He's definitely one of those guys that if you hear his drums, you recognize it as his drums, which is rare in the drumming world.
Yeah, he is a great drummer.
He is great drummer. And in my world, he also did the 2 best Wasp albums, with Crimson Idol and Headless Children.
Yeah.
So, I mean, the guy had a great career. Personal stuff is personal stuff. Some people like some people don't. And that's whatever. I'm not going to beat a guy that can't fight back. So, in the end, I'll appreciate the music that I got from him. And I certainly appreciate the fact that Quiet Riot, kicked the door down for the kind of music I like. Because otherwise, I'd be going to 35th anniversary tours of the Romantics or something.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I just want to also note a few other musicians who have passed too in the recent last few weeks. Also, a couple of days ago, Ron Trost-Heathman from the Super Suckers. I'm a big fan of that band, and another guy who once he left that band, to me, they were never the same. He was the main guitar player now. I mean, huge loss for obviously, if people don't know the Super Suckers, they were one of those bands that was around in the early 90s during the whole the Seattle days with grunge, but they were more of a punk, hard rock band, not so much a grunge band. They were, on Sub Pop, a very different kind of band that was on that label at the time. And so, if anybody wants to check out the Super Suckers, great records, The Evil Powers of Rock and Roll. It's really just like a classic hard rock record in the vein of like an AC/DC, Guns N' Roses type of record. Sure. It's really awesome. And of course, we had the original Machine Head drummer, Tony Costanza. He also played for Crowbar. He recently passed as well. And also Greg Narducci, who was in Spiral Arms, a great band from here. So let's move on to some good news here. We got that over with. Let's talk about what's coming next for our podcast. And we're talking about all 3 podcasts, the Classic Metal Show, Aftershocks, and Shockwaves Skull Sessions. Chris, why don't you go ahead and talk about the new CMS Podcast Network?
Sure. Well, I guess maybe a month, 6 weeks ago, whatever it was, the 4 of us, me, you 2, and Neely, kind of put our heads together and started thinking about the fact that we're all doing these podcasts, and they all sort of have a like audience, not completely. I'm sure there's some people that like Skull Sessions or like Aftershocks or like CMS that don't like one another. And fair enough. And probably most of that dislike comes at the CMS. I get that. But overall, the collective fan base likes what all 3 of us do. Because all 3 of us all 3 shows are doing the we're touching hard rock, we're touching heavy metal, we like classic stuff, we like some new stuff, and we all have that fuck you attitude. So it made sense, at least to my head, to kind of merge everything so that instead of people having to track around to different locations and different podcasts, just have it all in one spot. And that way, especially people that set it up on their phones, so it just downloads automatically. It made the most sense to just, not have a bunch of different podcasts all strewn on different programs and different platforms. Just have one platform, and that way it's all together. And if you subscribe to it, then you get the CMS, you get Skull Sessions, you get Aftershocks, you get the big three, as I will call it, of podcasts.
Mm-hmm.
So we decided that it was time to put together the CMS Podcast Network, and we've started doing it. We started with the Aftershocks because, honestly, just because it was the one that was most familiar to me. And then I took CMS and have been grindingly putting that together. And that's been somewhat of a slow process getting that one merged. And once we should be done with that by Wednesday. And then we're going to merge Skull Sessions in as well. So what will happen in the future is anytime any one of us put a podcast out, you'll be able to get it just by being subscribed to the CMS Podcast Network, it's available all the same places: Spotify, Apple, Google, Overcast, Pocket Casts, whatever you use, it's still available. So it just seems like a good way for us to kind of cross-pollinate our audiences and share where it makes sense to be shared, I guess.
Sure. Yeah, no, and I think, and Chris, you were saying, I think one of the main things too about, combining all three, as you mentioned, a lot of the listeners, it gives, so we've got obviously Skull Sessions, is really revolved around not just necessarily the classic metal, but we've got a lot of the, music industry, people involved in Skull Sessions, a lot of authors and, A&R guys and people who've worked at labels and, whatever, who've just been in the business maybe behind the scenes. And so Skull Sessions, obviously we also, Bob does a great job doing a lot of interviews with a lot of the classic musicians, and you get some of the other journalists and stuff on board to do a nice roundtable discussion. And of course, Aftershocks, like you said, it's mostly we're doing a lot of the bands that are outside of the classic metal realm. We've got just bands from say the 90s or even it doesn't matter what era it's from, but just different types of maybe the subgenres of metal. Sure. And we also focus on a lot of the newer up and coming bands as well. So we've got sort of the classic piece with the Skull Sessions. We've got the newer piece with Aftershocks, and of course with the CMS, you got your comedy and entertainment through CMS. So it's just I think it's great to have all three in one. And like you said, it's sort of like a one-stop shop where everyone could kind of just instead of going to the different feeds to get the episodes, it's just all going to be in one feed now. So especially for the Skull Session listeners that are listening right now, obviously when we do cross over, it should be probably the next couple of weeks. We'll have that all finished up, and it should automatically go through, right? It shouldn't be anything difficult in terms of trying to find where it is, right? Correct?
Well, in theory, and I'll say this in theory, nothing should change. In theory, anybody that's already subscribed should still be subscribed. Mm-hmm. Now, with CMS, I made some mistakes. I'm not going to lie about it or try to sugarcoat it. When I did the changeover, I made a couple of mistakes, which made it so that was not the case. Mm-hmm. But the CMS was my guinea pig, so Skull Sessions is flawlessly. but in the feed itself, if you're already subscribed to Skull Sessions, it's not going to change, and just if it does happen to change on you for some reason and you don't see the podcast, just search CMS Podcast Network and you'll find it right away. Just subscribe to that and you'll be done. So
awesome. Either way, it's a great idea, man. I mean, especially for someone like me who's a total simpleton when it comes to technology and computers, having just this one stop, everything on one platform just makes it so easy. You don't have to surf around and look for your favorite episode. Oh, boom, download right into your computer, or phone, or whatever your device. So yeah, absolutely.
And for just to make sure that people understand, like if you're a Skull Sessions fan and you hate the CMS as an example, which is fine. There's those people out there. everything in the feed is easily marked. So anything with Skull Sessions is going to say SS dash in front of it. Anything with Aftershocks says Aftershocks dash in front of it. Anything for CMS says CMS dash in front of it. If you're only looking for the Skull Session stuff, just delete the other stuff when it comes in. It's that simple. Or give it a listen and see if you like it, or and expand your horizons, as they say.
Nice.
No, absolutely. No, I know. So we're looking forward to it. And so, yeah, for the listeners out there, just be aware of that. If you don't see your Skull Sessions feed pop up, it should automatically pop up under CMS Network. CMS Podcast Network. Mm-hmm. And you'll also see the logos right there. You'll see the Skull Sessions logos. So that's where we'll be in the near future. So check that out. And Bob, while we're here, why don't you update everybody on what's going on with the Bay Area Godfathers?
Well, unfortunately, there's not anything to update. We've just been on hold. The movie has been done since January. We premiered it at the Heavy Metal Hall of Fame Award show at NAMM. We premiered part of part one. Mm-hmm. That's another long story. But that was, so the movie, just to give people an idea, that was back in, late January, and that's when we finished up the movie. So it's been how many months already? Obviously, we had a lot of screenings planned, which we had to cancel all of them due to the COVID. We had the big one, as Chris knows, in the Bay Area that we were going to do. I think that was in March, and then we had one in Portland. We had one set up in LA, actually a couple in LA and Orange County and Vegas. And so we figured that would, give us time during the summer to hype it up and to get people down to some premieres. And then we would have the release in late summer. Now the actual official release is October 6th. Okay. It'll be out on DVD and digital. We had some issues, dealings with the distributor and stuff. So that took a little bit of time. And, Warren at the time figured, we'll be doing screenings anyway. So, but now we're just in a waiting process. There's nothing really we could do. We are going to get out some promos pretty soon. We've kept it real hush hush. We haven't got any leaks to any of the to either part one or part two out yet, but we are going to send it out to press, and of course, obviously, all the people in the movie, including you, Chris, and some various press people and people that were involved. We'll be getting that out within the month or so, and but that's really where it stands. So October 6th, you'll be able to find it on most of the digital streaming networks. It should be on cable pay-per-view to begin with, and obviously on DVD, available at Amazon, Walmart, Best Buy, all those online .com. You could order the physical DVDs if you like. The DVDs will have bonus material, so for you collectors out there, a physical product, I suggest you order the DVD, and it will be available streaming most of the places, not on Netflix, but definitely Amazon Prime, Google Play, cool. Apple Music. So should be a good one. Should be a real good one. A lot of people really anticipating this one.
I know, and I did see you guys put out a new trailer for that too, right?
Yeah.
So you got 2 trailers out there now. Yeah.
Yeah, we kind of sneaked it out. We just kind of, Warren had a great guy, Rico Laurie, who actually edited the second title, The LA Metal Scene Explodes. He put together a short trailer. It's kind of a shorter trailer than the first one, but a great trailer. And in fact, I should pump that again. We just kind of let it sneak by. But a great little trailer teaser that hopefully will hype some people up on this.
Yeah, no doubt. Yeah. I mean, I've been fortunate enough to see the movie itself, thanks to you giving me a little sneak preview of it, and it's definitely not going to disappoint the fans out there and the metal heads around the world for sure, man. It's a great, I think, depiction you did of really of the scene, not just when the thrash scene started, but even prior to it. That's what I like about it most is you talk a lot about those bands that were there and that were starting up that scene before Metallica arrived from L.A. Back in the early 80s and stuff. So, yeah, it's going to be awesome, man.
We covered the whole gamut of the Bay Area. That's why the movie's titled The Bay Area Godfathers, and it's the newest in the Inside Metal series. So, I think people will enjoy it for sure.
Yeah, no, definitely. Definitely. I think that's about it. We can get ready to wrap this up. Anything else you guys want to mention before we close it out?
I'm good.
You're good?
Yeah, no, everything good, man. I'm looking forward to this new CMS network, and I think it'll definitely be a good thing for the fans for all the podcasts.
Mm-hmm. I agree, absolutely. And, of course, we've got a couple, obviously we've got plenty of Aftershocks coming up this week. We've got a couple of Skull Sessions lined up as well, so a lot of good things to be expected in the near future from all podcasts. And, all right, well, sounds good, guys. Great talking.
Thank you for listening to the Shockwaves Skull Sessions podcast. Subscribe and listen to all episodes by going to our pages on iTunes, Spreaker, YouTube, Spotify, and more. You can listen to all other episodes and access up-to-date information and news on the Shockwaves Skull Sessions podcast by going to our website at www.shockwaveskullsessions.com. Email all comments, questions, and suggestions to shockwaveskullsessions@gmail.com.